Andy, why should people listen to this episode of Pod Friends featuring you?
This was a very, very fun episode of Pod Friends. It was very great. We got into a lot of things. I think that this episode is really special for lovers of Rob as a podcast because it is my life journey and how my life journey is just runs in parallel to this world that we all share. And like I mentioned, I just hope this is a love letter to RHAP because it's just one of the most special things I've ever been a part of. And this podcast is absolutely a part of it. So give it a listen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pod Friends. I'm your host, Matt Scott. This week, I have two very, very special announcements, including one of them being a way for you to be part of Pod Friends and my upcoming season finale. But first, let me announce the very, very big news. And I'm kind of mind blown by it. And I talk with this week's guest about it a little bit. We have Pod Friends merch. So after so many years of doing Pod Friends, after hearing from folks asking like, where's the merch? Where's the merch? Thanks to the one and only Derek Stasinski behind the scenes at RHAP. And of course, earlier in this season of Pod Friends featured sharing his own story, we have Pod Friends merch. We have shirts in all the colors that I love. I want to get every single one of them. And you could get them now, out today at robasawebsite.com/store. That's robasawebsite.com/store. Get your Pod Friend shirts. I'm so excited. If you order a Pod Friend shirt, let me know. Tag me on social media at MattScottGW. Send me a screenshot, DM me, whatever it is. Let me know in the comments on the RHAP Facebook group, because it means the world. I've loved all the merch that we've had, all the people who've bought it for my other show on RHAP, The Pride Has Spoken. That's been so incredible, just meeting that community of folks and knowing what the podcast means to them. And I feel like getting Pod Friends merch is so special and so surreal because this is my show, but really this is our show. And so if you get a Pod Friends shirt, let me know. They are out now. And as I talk about in the episode this week with Andy, so hard to digest all the love and support that you all give. But I'm excited to hear from you, excited to see you get those shirts. And also, who knows, even if you get your shirts now, excited to have some incentives or fun stuff for folks who get the Pod Friends shirt. So stay tuned for more on that. The second announcement is that I want you to be part of the season finale of Pod Friends by sharing the story of how Survivor and the Survivor community has changed your life. I'll say for the better. I love hearing from all of you and your stories, whether that's at RHAP live shows, whether that's through social media or otherwise. And I want to invite you to be part of this season finale in a very special way. Again, I spoke about this with Andy. Andy was getting all the tea in the interview that we did. So you'll hear more of that soon. But if you want to be part of sharing your story, if you want to be part of this upcoming season finale of Pod Friends, submit either a video or an audio message by going to bit.ly/survivor50stories. That's bit.ly/survivor50stories. Submit those ASAP. All submissions are 60 seconds or less. And if you get those in, especially over this next week, it'll be amazing because you'll be part of the season finale in some way. Still cooking up what that looks like. I have next week's episode recorded and figured out, and I'm so excited for you to hear that, featuring the one and only PG Law of Survivor China. But I'm so thrilled for you to hear this week's episode featuring Andy Rueda, who some know as Baby Andy, who's part of this community in RHAP, and who's so amazing because we all know what it's like to be fans of Survivor. We all know how much the show and this community means to us. But imagine having the opportunity to play that game, maybe not having the ideal circumstances or the ideal story along the way, but then having this amazing time, making so many friends through the process, learning so much about yourself, and still having dreams and goals for your life that go way beyond Survivor. I love talking with Andy about so many things, including mental health, about his upbringing, including Survivor 50, talking about his experience with that and being in the casting process. And again, so much more along the way. I know so many folks loved the episode with Omer from last week, Omer Zahir of Survivor 42. And I loved hearing all of your thoughts and feedback on that. And I'm so excited for you all to hear this episode with Andy, which similarly goes deep, goes so many places. Andy's so honest and real, just like Omer. You know, what a raw, real, and inspiring conversation, and one that I'm excited for all of you to hear. But as always, reach out to me at MattScottGW on all platforms. Again, submit your story, bit.ly/survivor50stories. And without further ado, let me introduce our guest. Making his way to the podcast, hailing from Buffalo, New York, and now strategizing out of Brooklyn, he's the AI researching, K-pop standing, Survivor superfan turned player. He's a man who brought his energy, his warmth, and creativity to Survivor 47, and we love him for it. He is the German-speaking confessional giver, the Baby Andy origin story himself, the one, the only, Andy Rueda. I'm so glad, Andy, to have you on Pod Friends for so many reasons, but one was when I heard you on my other podcast, The Pride Has Spoken, but with Grace and with Evie and not me there, talking about bisexuality as a bisexual king. I was really jealous, and I said to myself, I need to have Andy on Pod Friends someday. So here we are. We manifested it.
Yes, we did, and I feel the same exact way. It's so cool being at this stage of not just my Survivor journey, but my life and looking back. I think that just really recently, Rob as a podcast has been top of my mind and how much it's meant to me. And I love all of the Survivor coverage. I love all the Big Brother coverage. We could get into that, but I think some of the podcasts that have meant the most to me over the years are the personal ones, like these ones where we really can learn more about someone as a person and where something like Survivor fits into the context of their lives. So I'm thinking back, the Taryn Show is a big one.
Yeah, of course.
Road to Reality is a huge one.
With Kellen.
And The Pride Has Spoken is really a massive one. I think it's one of the biggest achievements that Rob as a Podcast Network has ever had. And yeah, to this day, I kind of get the most emotional when I run into a fan or whatever, and they talk about the episode I did on The Pride Has Spoken. I just think that meant something really meaningful to me. So congrats to you for being part of that. And then leading to here, Pod Friends is it's exactly the same. It's in the same vein, and it has the same DNA as some of these really, really special conversations.
Yeah, no, that all means the world to me, and I think like you can probably get or relate to something that I felt because I've been an RHAP listener since 2017. So like before I was part of RHAP, which was the class of 2020. Wow, it's insane to think I've been part of RHP
Right.
as a podcaster
Yeah.
longer than I was just a listener, but I have never realized that. That's so strange. But like, I always thought RHP was like a certain thing, and I'm used to. I mean, I still love all the people I was listening to, but like Mike Bloom, like Josh Wigler, Taryn, like the list
Yeah.
goes on and on. And I'm like still stunned and amazed that things like The Pride Has Spoken and Pod Friends exist. Because Taryn was doing the Taryn show, of course, and there's Talking with T-Bird. And then later, of course, Kellen came along with Road to Reality and so on and so forth. But like, yeah, it's cool to be able to get to know folks. And I'm so excited to dive in deeper with you, Andy. But I don't know why. I have to ask.
Sure.
Maybe it's like the chaos in me, but like, I don't know if anyone's ever asked you about your hair routine specifically. You have the most fabulous hair on Survivor. I feel like it was its own character, its own superpower. Yes, twirl it for the audio listeners. I always love to tell the audio listeners you're missing out if you're not watching the video version. But like, what's the secret?
All right, well, let's get into my hair.
Yeah.
My hair has kind of low key meant a lot, all in its own way, and it's taken on a life of its own. This is before it appeared on Survivor, but
Mhm.
I think my hair was short growing up, like
Oh my
my
gosh.
whole life. So when I was growing up, it was like 2005, 2007, right? And
Mhm.
there's so many kids who had the moppy hairstyle at the time.
Yeah.
I really wanted that. I really wanted to grow out my hair, but my mom just would never let me. I would always have to get it cut, so it was short for so long
Right.
until around 2017, 2018, which is an important inflection point in my life, which I'm excited to get into. But
Mhm.
physical manifestation of that was my decision to like grow out my hair for the first time, and I think not just in visual ways, but like in I guess mental ways, right? It's a demarcation point in my life when I had long hair, when I had short hair, and kind of where my life has gone since I made a decision like that. Which again, it's superficial, and I don't know, like I shy away from all types of like.
Yeah.
I kind of have this thing like I think as a society we care about appearances like way too much. That's kind of
Mhm.
a lukewarm take, but
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, it's like what I love about it is that it's some type of external manifestation of um, sort of growth in my life in a way. But
Yeah.
when it comes to the routine, it's always because I do get that sometimes. It's not the most satisfying answer because I I don't have to do much upkeep at all. Like I don't know. I just
I felt it coming. I just felt the shift. Like yeah, I because I at first I wouldn't be surprised if you're like okay, like there's like Pantene involved. I don't know. I feel like you need a sponsorship, by the way,
oh, thank you.
hair care wise, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, no, tell me what's the approach?
Um, in my day to day life, I just kind of I don't shampoo every day. Um, what always comes to mind, maybe I'm just digging deep into these millennial references, but Lizzie McGuire, there's this guy, Ethan Kraft, who's the character,
Yes.
and he had this line that stuck with me. It's like, that it says rinse, lather, repeat. I don't repeat.
This is like also perfect. Hillary Duff's having a moment, so we
Yeah.
love a Lizzie McGuire reference. And no, I think it's cool though. Like I mean, to maybe this is just like the way that my brain works, but like hair, a million different things though are just expressions of who we are,
Right.
right? And I had to go there just for the people wondering, of course. But I'm so curious to dive more into your story and who you are
Yeah.
because I feel like in a lot of ways, I mean, even just based on Survivor, people feel so connected to you and like they know. I mean, even from RHAP,
Yeah.
before that, people feel
Right.
so connected to you.
Yeah.
And so I am like so curious. Just like maybe a good place to start is like, are there parts of who you are, Andy, that you feel like are like that you'd want people to know more about that like you haven't talked about as much?
That's a great question. Um, I guess what comes to mind is and I would like to. We can like start from the beginning of my journey, get into
Go back, yeah.
into the Survivor fandom, and before I played. So we could start from the beginning, but before we do that, I think I could just say what this at the top of my mind is that
Hmm.
I'm very, very grateful and humbled and appreciative of so much that Survivor 47 has given me. Like, not just the growth I experienced on the island or just the amazing experiences I had on the island,
Yeah.
so much of the aftermath. Um, and it's been very, very, I always say I came out way ahead going on Survivor. But
Hmm.
there are other aspects to it, which we'll get into more detail, but I do sometimes have a part of me that like worries if I'm like misunderstood in kind of I don't know, and I don't think I'm alone when it comes to reality TV contestants who go through an experience, and then there's the other layer of the edited betrayal, right?
Totally.
But I think probably I'm experiencing a common thing with reality stars is like, well, I showed sides of me for sure, and there's so much
Mhm.
authenticity with certain sides of me that I showed, but like whether or not you love me or you don't love me, like I don't think you know me. Um,
Right.
and I think that's again definitely not alone. I think so many people feel that way coming out of reality TV. Um, that's something that I have been reflecting on, being kind of this one step removed. I filmed Survivor almost 2 years ago, maybe like a year and
Mhm.
months or so ago, and
Right.
then it aired more than a year ago at this point. Um, and so that had, yeah, like I do feel as much as I continue to love Survivor and as much as I continue to love Rob as a podcast, I think you're talking to me at a time where I'm kind of like have space to reflect on things.
Mhm.
Um, I know when people talk with Kellen on Road to Reality, there's that theme where it's like she's almost not ready to talk to someone unless they're like 2 or 3 years removed from the experience,
Yeah.
because you kind of do need the time and space to reflect. But okay, that with that sort of established, I am just, yeah, like right now I feel very nostalgic and just have all these warm feelings about how much this world has meant to me, and that's Survivor, but Rob is a podcast in general. When I talked about 2017, which is a big turning point. I was a couple years out of college.
Mhm.
I had just left my first big relationship is with um, a woman who was my college girlfriend.
Mhm.
So she got me into Survivor. Now that's interesting. I feel like
Yeah.
and I was
Wait,
on the
she got you into wait, what do you so, like, you were a Survivor fan as a kid, right? But
yes,
then
yes. She
she,
got me
like
back into Survivor. That's correct. I was a
wow.
big reality TV junkie as a kid, but Survivor was just kind of one thing in the mix. I was like kind of almost more into the real world and the challenge, which I do not
Oh,
watch anymore.
100 it's also very different. Like, I once be on the challenge when they were, like, in, like, bathing suit or in, like, swimsuits or
Right.
whatever, like, melting ice cubes. Like, that for me, I think I could melt an ice cube, but I don't know about it. It's very different now,
Yeah,
so
I was like had the most casual of casual point of views on it. I'm like, I could only name probably like I loved Boston Rob from All Stars
Mhm.
predominantly, and um, you know, I could name Russell Hanson, probably Johnny Fairplay, and that might have been it at the time. But then my college girlfriend got me back into the show in a big way, and like this is sort of the spark that launched this whole trajectory was
Mhm.
Survivor Token Sheen. So shout out to
Oh.
Stephen Fishback, who's my first like real favorite Survivor player. Um, But yeah,
Author of Escape, by the way. Just
oh,
got to give a shout out to Steven for a sec. I know your
I have that
book's
somewhere.
probably
I feel
just
like I
out
have
of
that in
reach.
the other room. I have that in the other room. Yeah. So, yeah, shout out to Steven. But so I think it's interesting that I had just gotten back into Survivor, but I was leaving that relationship. And there was so many ways in which I was kind of adrift at that time of my life. And I just, there was some kind of, it wasn't like the most, I look back kind of fondly on that time because it was sort of a productive time to be alone and work on myself in a way, right?
Mhm.
But all that to say, Survivor filled a giant space in my life at that point. And I went back to the start and like, starting from Borneo and just binged every season. There are probably seasons I watched like 2 or 3 times, like in a kind of short span. I was just became obsessed with it. I do have a kind of obsessive personality when it comes to just diving into things that when something hooks me, like, my passion just grows really fast. And then like
Mhm.
talk to me in a week and I'm like already kind of the so-called expert on on my new like obsession. Survivor really fulfilled that in a really deep way. And it really wasn't that long until I started looking at, internet fan spaces. And then Rob as a podcast was like, a huge one. And so I think that offered me what it offers so many people is, you kind of feel like you're the only person who's got this interest, uh,
Mhm.
but now you're hearing a bunch of people talk about it, and you're not just hearing anyone talk about it. But I had already seen Amazon, right? So, and Token Jeans, right? So I was big fans of both of their games, right? But it's people I recognize talking about Survivor in just a fascinating way that just kind of build your imagination. And you're like, there's actually something
Mhm.
really deep here. There's something uh, like social strategy reality TV on CBS. It's like, that's not something that people would think of on the surface as anything, highbrow or like with all this depth. But Rob's
Right.
podcast, I think, really unlocks that for so many people. Um, and it did for me for sure. And that was like, again, this was like just a time in my life where it was like a total transition period. Um, and spoiler alert, like I would say some of these things in the Survivor casting process, and I
Yeah.
meant it. Like this show unlocked something in me. And I think probably early on, I think a part of that was loving the show. It was loving this community that I was just kind of a passive part of at the time. But then there was like a third part where it's like, well, do you know what? I think I might do this one day.
Mm.
But I kind of want to play Survivor, and that could be like a really huge life goal. But yeah, I do think, and that's gone on such amazing directions, and we can like continue the story. But like, yeah, like I think that's something that Rob as a podcast offers to a lot of people, like the hidden depths of Survivor and Big Brother.
Yeah.
And not just that, but the discussions around it.
It's so interesting hearing this because I mean, I think maybe like as a Survivor fan, especially with Survivor 50 coming up, which is like I think it's an interesting and complicated topic with so many people. Like Omer was on the episode that we just released last week, and we were talking about his story with that, and I'm sure there's your journey with that also. But maybe to start, like the thing that comes to mind for me, to your point, is that Survivor has had such a meaningful place in people's lives. Like for me, 2017 was when I got into listening to Rob as a podcast just after my dad passed away. And so like there are all these emotions. And I think like having those, to borrow from probably a lot of people, but like I think of Bryce Isaiah with this, like the friends in your head, where it's like, oh, like I know Steven and Rob and Terry, and like the list goes on and on. I know Baby Andy, who's this like other listener who I don't yet know,
Right,
all
right.
these things, right? And like it means the world to people. And I think it's cool, like even just hearing that from you. And you have this interesting trajectory from obviously being a fan to then like being a player, but then also still being a fan, which I think is fascinating. I think I know we're seeing so much more of that now with Survivor. But I have to mention to you, like, there's this idea that I had, and I guess I have to do it now because I'm telling you about it on the podcast. But I really want to have like listeners of RHAP. I want to have 50 listeners. That's my goal of RHAP. Exactly 50, not 51, maybe 51 for good luck. But like 50 listeners of RHAP send in like videos or voicemails or whatever and share like how Survivor has affected them, or maybe that means like how the RHAP community as it relates to Survivor has affected them. Because like there are a lot of these stories where like I've heard from maybe I'd say way too many people who are like, yeah, I lost this person in my life. I had this breakup. Omer talks a lot about his breakup in the context of like his relationship with Survivor in the shows. And it's like, yeah, we all have these like heavy things sometimes that like bring us to this show beyond just like loving the show and what it is. But like maybe going, well, I don't know. I don't want to shift away from that. I don't know if there are any thoughts you
Well,
have
I
on
just
like
think,
all
and
that.
yeah, this relates to what I was like, there's like this idea I'm getting at where it's like there are a few things in life where you can actually kind of find purpose.
Yeah.
And some of them are clearer than others. Like if you are passionate about your profession, that's purpose. But yeah, and then community, right, is also a huge part of that. And that's something that Rob as a podcast offers. But I think it's almost, and Rob as a podcast is probably one of the most special communities that's like ever been created on the internet. I don't know, like it's just remarkable. It's remarkable how much it's been resilient to changes in the world, in reality TV. It's just kind of a miracle in its own right. But I think just the combination of those things, people find purpose in Rob's podcast. So no, it's really great, and it's really, that meant a lot to me. And that's like 2018. So 2019 was like the forward momentum stage of that, where like I got a new job, which was like positive experience. Thinking about the hair, right? Like it grew to, when you grow out your hair, it kind of looks terrible for a bit. And then 2019 is when it like kind of like got long, right?
Wow, I love that. Like it's a good
Yeah.
symbolic representation of where you are in life. I love that.
I found a really, really positive friend group in Brooklyn where I was living at the time and where I still live. So 2019 was, I look back and it was one of the best years of my life in a lot of ways. And it's so funny to track my adult life with like Rob's podcast, but it's just still, it's always there and it's always parallel. But 2019 was so amazing because that's when I became an active member of the Robinson podcast community and probably bit the bullet and became a patron, right? And then speaking of like the parasocial side of things, it's so cool from my perspective because this parasocial stuff, it kind of like, it's like a two-way parasocial relationship with like myself and some like RHAP podcasters and whatnot. But I've become, I was so familiar with Rob as a listener. It blew my mind. It still blows my mind that he takes the time and the effort and, the energy to go on podcasts and talk straight to listeners. I don't think I've ever seen that before. There are call-in shows, not like an invented concept, but the scale at which he does it is that blew my mind. So I was like, oh, I really want to talk with him. So I called in for the first time. I was like actually really, really nervous.
Right.
It's kind of shout out to everyone who does that. I think I don't know if it comes across this way or whatever, but like it's a big leap to be a huge fan of Rob's podcast from the sidelines. The vast majority are probably, I would imagine, right? Take that leap and then to kind of put yourself out there within this space is I remember, there have been times in my life where I was very had like a nervous adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I called in with RHAP, the only thing I could say, it was amazing practice for when I started going through Survivor casting.
Well, yeah. I mean, one, you're talking with Rob, who is like, I've said this. I think I've probably heard Mike Bloom say this, or maybe we talked about this on Pod Friends, how like those patron Q&As and like Rob talking with people, it's one of the most impressive things, because you just see Rob on, whether it's for an hour. I feel like he, even a few years ago, maybe especially 2020, 2021, he'd be on there for hours just talking with people, and he'd remember the conversation he had with each person. And he's having all of these like sometimes like 10-minute, 15-minute conversation, 20-minute conversation sometimes with people. And it's like, how do you freaking do it, Rob? Like, why are you so good at this? But for me, it jumped out like, whoa, I have a lot to learn, like just from all of that. But it's interesting because I haven't thought about it as much from the listener perspective or from like the patron perspective, where people are actually like joining in and having those conversations. And yet I know you were someone who did that like literally all the time.
I came in hot because it was almost like an addictive feeling, right? Because it was so cool, and then it's so cool to like put yourself out there and kind of feel good about it. It just makes you want to do it more. So during that, at the end part of 2019, I was like very, very active with RHAP stuff, and I ended up making a couple appearances. Like I was on Twitch, like pretty soon after that. And it was like that hotbed of like rapid RHAP activity, which birthed the nickname Baby Andy. Now,
yes,
I love having a degree of mystery with Baby Andy. When people still ask me about it, I tell them I gave a definitive lore drop on a recap I did.
Right. And people still ask, like, even getting ready for this episode, there are multiple people who are like, what's the story behind Baby Andy? What is like the short of it? Because I don't even know if I remember correctly where it came in or what the explanation is that you gave. But I'll tell you, Andy, and I don't know if this is completely off. In my head, I'm just like picturing you dressed as a baby. Like, I don't know if that was it.
No, it was the short version without context actually sounds probably more unhinged, but yeah, the long version you could see on my Survivor 48 recap. The short version is that I had a hot take that as a society we need to normalize adult diapers. Now, I stand by this take. It sounds very scorching on the surface, but I think it's only reasonable. I mean,
practically speaking, I'm on board. I'm on board with you. Like, practically speaking, that makes sense. I don't have any experience with adult diapers. It's been like 30 years for me since I've like gotten into a diaper. Like maybe yeah, exactly. We're the same age. Like I feel like things are probably very different now with the diaper technology. But I'm with you. Why are we not doing that?
It's a whole unexplored territory, and there are people with conditions, like I just don't think it should carry the social stigma that it does. And just, I mean, I have a small bladder. It's not like
no,
it's really just,
I'm sorry,
my girlfriend and I both have small bladders. It's kind of one of our like
that's so sweet.
I know, it's like we're compatible.
You are.
But I just always find myself in public being like, what is the deal with the public restroom situation?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wait, this is like such a good point, because I'm even thinking about, I mean, sure, here in DC, but like New York City, like you could go around, and unless you're going to a restaurant where oftentimes there's a sign like you need to be a patron here to use the bathroom, like there are not really a lot of bathrooms. I mean, I guess you could, and then there are bathrooms you don't really want to go to. Like, I'm telling you,
there's a lot of hostility and there's a lot of unpleasantness. And if
in the unpleasant bathrooms or unpleasantness
anyway,
because I'm thinking of the Penn Station bathroom there. That's one of them. I feel like the Moynihan train hall, because I'm passing through New York a lot. I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of an upgrade here, but you never know. And then we're not even going to talk about porta potties. I'm like anti porta potty.
I mean, it's not a pleasant experience, but I'm very pro porta potty because
I guess in practice,
to go. Like I'd rather they be there than not.
Yeah.
There's so many, like I live in New York, right? So there's so many situations, whether you're like in like, I don't know, like Soho shopping or whatever, you're in the park. uh, There are times where you really don't have access to any bathroom.
That's true.
And it's just like, it's so misaligned with the reality of our like biological situation. And we have no recourse. So I think that at the very least, we should, you know, normalize the option and have brands invest in, as you said, like, fashion technology, like diaper technology to like make it all. Anyway.
I feel like honestly you might be the foremost advocate for diaper technology, and you know what? Like, that's not a bad place to be in. I just wanna see your TED Talk, though. Like, that's
Right. This could be my new
we
platform.
might I would not be shocked if I mean, I wouldn't be shocked in general if you had, like, a TED Talk or some other, like, keynote like that talking about but, like, on this topic, I feel like or you could talk about something else more broadly and then just, like, slot in the
Listen,
Baby Andy story.
I stand by it to this day. And so for that reason, I love Baby Andy, the moniker. I think I just think it's cool. It adds to this overall story I'm telling with like where what RHAP has meant to me over the years. I think it's really cool. But yeah, so like that happened in 2019, which is a great year of my life. And I think that was such a big stepping stone to my journey in a lot of ways, because I feel like that's when I found a big well of confidence in myself and belief in myself, which is a huge overarching theme. And I think, the lesson is that like you're always a work in progress, and progress isn't linear, right? But
Yeah.
when I was a kid, like and I will say, let me preface this, like when I think of like my struggles in terms of like anxiety and social situations and lack of confidence, I think just speaking from my own journey, I think I've been my biggest enemy the entire time. I didn't experience too much in the way of bullying necessarily. I certainly was not popular, certainly.
I honestly wonder who was, because I feel like, like how we perceive ourselves is so different than how others perceive us. And it'll never cease to be like the most interesting thing to me. Like, I'm sure there were some people who looked at you and like, Andy's the coolest, like back in high school, like I'm sure that was a thing to someone.
Well,
or like to me, and then at the same time I'm like, I don't have friends, like I'm not cool, like what's going on? So I just I want to acknowledge that how we look at ourselves is sometimes like so different than how others look at us.
But I would say, like, what is like, if I wasn't popular, didn't have many friends, what was the reason? It's because I shut myself off and didn't talk because I was afraid that I would be rejected for, being more open and being more out there. I remember actually, because this is really a middle school and high school type of situation. I was like, when I was a little kid, the world was my oyster. Everything was great.
I 100% relate to you, by the way, which is like so strange to think about. Well, I mean, I guess this is like, I was gonna say it's strange to think about like these parallel experiences we were probably having, but I'm sure there's like so many people going through that too, even listeners who are tuning in. So,
but I feel like I was like, cruising through my childhood, elementary school, and then in 5th grade, I really I was truly myself, and I was very authentic, and I had a lot of high energy, and I put myself out there. And it wasn't until 5th grade when I was like doing that where people were like, "You are weird, like you're too much." It was a dose of that. It wasn't.
That's a time where that hurts, like when you get things like that said to you, or like I'll say even for me, like one of the things as a Black kid, but also like Black kid in New Jersey where I grew up, all of it. Like I remember, some of the kids who would like call me Nate, or like call me like an Oreo or what. Like I've talked about this before on the podcast, that like we all have these like weird, kids could be really cruel at
Yeah.
times, or we could be cruel as kids, but it like sucks to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah. And so that was like kind of so at that point I was like shot down, and that kind of put me in a different headspace going into middle school. Things get so complicated when you go from 5th grade to 6th grade. At least that's when middle school starts for me. Adolescence, and I retreated completely and totally, and just lived in my own world, and didn't like, take that opportunity to like, a lot of my social skills kind of regressed, I suppose. So it was a hard time for me along those lines, even though I will say like it wasn't because of overwhelming external being treated poorly or something. That's just me though. But it's complicated, right? And then like, I guess your point, like in my middle school and high school, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, but not just Buffalo, New York, but like a certain area of the suburbs in the north towns of Buffalo, New York, which was, overwhelmingly white. And when I don't know how to exactly say this, but I think when I was younger, I think I like maybe looked a little bit more on my Asian side of things, right? Pictures of me younger. So like it was such that it was kind of like I was one of the few visible minorities. And it became very complicated. And then like during that era, I don't know how things are these days. Like I'm not a teacher like with the young kids or whatever, but in those times, a lot of the media we were consuming was like from channels like Comedy Central, right?
Yeah.
And the comedic era we were in then was South Park, which I actually do have some positive things to say about South Park, but there was South Park, but then there was like these shows like Mind of Mencia.
Oh yeah.
What the shows like that did at the time was leaning into jokes about race. Now, I'm not making any value judgment about that per se, but as a byproduct, like there are like these impressionable 12 and 13-year-olds like consuming these jokes, maybe without the nuance. And so as a result, like it was really rampant, like race-based jokes that were more mean-spirited, like in the school bus and in the lunchroom and stuff like that. So there was that.
Like totally based in like so many of them based in stereotypes. Like when you said South Park, like I mean, like I think I don't even remember his name, but like the restaurant owner in South Park is like a character that's like very stereotypical. Or there's like all these different characters we get, and it kind of blows my mind that we grew up in that time, but also at a weird point where things, I feel like, especially, I would say maybe it was like somewhere between like 2009 and like 2012, where things shifted to being like more socially conscious in ways where it's like, oh, that joke that like certain people made back in 2007, like you definitely couldn't say that by like 2014, or we understood more, I think. And maybe part of that's like because of like social media and like just more ways of learning about these things popping up. But it sounds like a really hard time and place to be in, especially and I could relate in a lot of ways, but like growing up in Buffalo as like one of the only ones, in that space.
It wasn't the most golden time of my life. But like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm like kind of like, my takeaway looking back is that what's true is that maybe I faced some adversity along those lines, but like this was the start of me being like kind of my own saboteur. And I'm not, I was a kid, but like these kind of things stick with you, right? And then going into college,
I will also say, just to like jump into, like it is so interesting, like how you're talking about it, of yourself as like your own saboteur, so to speak. And I would almost like push back and be like, well, that's just like what the environment and all
Right.
the factors around you kind of made. Like,
Mm.
that's something that I've kind of had to realize, which is just like, yeah, I'm a result of like all of this shit out there that, like, for better for worse, like,
Right.
thankfully a lot of good things too, but like,
Yeah.
you know, for better or for worse makes us who we are. And so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you couldn't have avoided being quote unquote like your own saboteur in that way, I think,
Right.
just because
Right.
like there's a lot of that was a hard time to grow up in, a weird time.
Yeah, it was weird time. That's very true. So I hold a ton of empathy for myself at the same time. And then going to college, I made a big change. I moved from Buffalo to New York City. Um, I went to NYU for something that I don't do now, but was part of the film and TV
I,
school.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I want to ask about that because I didn't know that. First of all, why did you? I'm sure you'll talk about your experience within that, but like, why did you? What was your draw to film and TV, especially because now you're more on the technical
Yeah,
end of things, right?
very true. But I will preface this by saying I just don't. No matter, I feel like I'm someone who does different things, and I don't. I
Mm,
feel I've I feel like gained some power in like just not pigeonholing myself, right?
hmm.
And just like I'm not too locked into some idea that I'm one thing or what have you. But
You don't
anyway,
need to be.
yeah. Um, so in during that high school time, like what was filling that space and what was kind of something I was leaning on was just I was getting super into movies, like like just experimenting with different films as well as TV. So beautiful, wonderful time for TV during that time. So like some of the prestige dramas at the time. I was obsessed with Lost. Obsessed
Oh
with
my gosh. Yeah, no, easily. Amazing.
so good. Um, I
Did you see yourself in any of the characters in particular from Lost? I'm curious.
wait, such a great question. Um,
I always think, I mean, not, I don't know. I think of, is it Boone with like the amazing hair? But that's is it Boone? I don't know. It's been a while since I've watched
yeah,
Lost.
yeah.
But no, I'm curious. Yeah, because it is fun. Like when we think about representation, and you've talked about it a little bit here and otherwise, where it's like it's really, it's interesting when like we don't fully have someone who represents like all sides of who you are and of your identity, and
Yeah,
yet like you still might pick up on different things with people.
right.
Does anyone come to mind from
I love
Lost?
Saeed. Saeed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that tracks. I don't know. I was just
Mhm.
super into him. He was one of my favorites. Um, no, but like I was super. So like and it was airing at the time. So that was like a great rabbit hole to go off of if you're like obsessive because there were all the fan theories out there. It just
Mhm.
really kind of sparked my imagination. And I'm obsessed. No surprise. I'm obsessed with the concept of people stranded on an island and having to deal with like the social hierarchies.
I never would have guessed that about you at all.
But give me Lord of the
Crazy.
Flies,
Yeah.
Lost,
Oh.
Survivor, like just obsessed with that.
Oh gosh, you're scaring me because it's like now so much is making sense. I really did. It was sick and twisted, but like I did love Lord of the Flies at the
So
time
good.
too. Or was like fascinated by it. That's so
So
interesting. I've never really thought about that parallel with like,
really,
people on islands and the hard hierarchies. Too
yeah.
much, too much.
It's just like one of the best sort of playgrounds for like, character arcs and social dynamics and power inversions. And yeah, it's just, I love it. So
I feel like you could talk with like Jeff Probst about this for hours because I know for him, like so much of it is like looking at like putting people on this island and they're, stripped of everything. Who do you become when you're stripped of everything? And like there's a lot of that.
yeah.
I'm in Lost, of course, in Survivor,
Mhm.
in Lord of the Flies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
Yeah. So true. And that really like and I just became like obsessed with fiction, and I wanted to be a screenwriter. That's what I wanted to do, and not just a screenwriter. I wanted to be kind of like a showrunner of a 1 hour drama, like Breaking Bad.
Mhm.
That was like my life goal. That was my life dream, and so I it's so funny. I applied to NYU because I wanted to do that, but in high school, I didn't have the confidence that I could get in, so I applied to NYU's College of Arts and Sciences, which is like more the general school, with this like harebrained mission that I was going to become an internal transfer. It really didn't make, and from a logical standpoint, it didn't make that much sense. But they accepted me, but they put me into a special, like a different program, like the liberal studies program, which is for students with certain academic profiles, where the idea was you're in this liberal studies program for 2 years, and then you would feed into this College of Arts and Sciences, and you can pick your major. So I accepted because like the idea of moving to New York City and going to NYU is really cool. The short version is that freshman year was actually one of the most trying years of my life, and was kind of the low point of my like the ability to not be lonely, right? And like have confidence in myself and have the ability to make friends and stuff. It was a very, very rough adjustment. And I was like not doing the curriculum that I wanted to do. It was very, very tough. But through that struggle of that year, I made the next step, and I applied for an internal transfer to the film school, which like it wasn't a good plan, but it worked. And then I got
I mean, to me, it's like you get into the alliance, and maybe you're on the outside. Maybe you're like the sixth person alliance. But then you have the in, so you could work your way up. I think honestly, I appreciate it because like even for me, like applying to college, like I was like, do I apply to this? And I didn't end up studying journalism. I ended up studying business. But like, I'm like, do I apply to the journalism school, which is really small and selective, or do I go for something that's like also interesting with more opportunity to do that? And so I admire that. And there's so much I relate with you on, Andy, but like my freshman year of college was a struggle. Like I was struggling academically, socially. I thought so many times, like, am I supposed to be here? Do I need to like go somewhere else? Like, is this work? I don't know. I think there are a lot of these things, and maybe this is just a theme I see, but a lot of these things that a lot of us face, and like literally no one talks about, like unless you're at a breaking point. It's not like you really are going to talk with your friends who are also freshmen in college about how much you're struggling, because you don't think anyone wants to hear it.
Yeah. And well, in freshman year, I was alone in New York City. I didn't make a single friend. It was like, like in freshman year, like you make early friends. I had this like nightmare situation where like I made these early friends, and then they like kicked me out.
What? No.
Like 3 weeks in.
You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve that.
I don't know why.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. People are weird.
You know what? It all worked out for the best because I made sort of that big move to do that internal transfer to something I really wanted, a school I really wanted to be a part of, the Tisch School for film and TV. And I made incredible friends once I got into that school. And there's still kind of the nucleus of, people in my life, kind of with a couple exceptions, they're my oldest friends, really, that I'm still friends with. And there was a big turnaround. So, thinking of echoes of like things that happen in your life and journeys you go on, it was a crazy positive turnaround. And it was like, it was good. As far as the screenwriting itself as a career, like, I think that after graduating, I kind of had never given myself credit for the other side of like my brain with the sort of the numbers and the quantitative side of it. I actually was not engaged in math at all in high school. English was the only subject I liked or cared about or did well. But I think that I wanted to kind of explore, you know, that side of me. So I kind of broke into the tech industry with like no qualifications at all. I was like worked for this like random ass startup to start off and just build skills on the job and kind of built my career in that way. But like I said at the start, when it comes to who am I and what do I do when it comes to vocation and stuff, like I still want to be a writer. Like you just, and I know it's a dream that a lot of people have, and it's a dream that like you can't just take it lightly or anything like that. But there was a period in my life, this was kind of recent, where I wrote down, you know, 3 life goals. One was to get on Survivor.
Check.
One was to, you know, kind of build a career, whether it be in tech or just like something that like I can use that side of my brain and like do well, and you know, can support a family off of it. Check. Well, not check, but it's there.
Well, yeah.
Progress. And 3 is to kind of like write a series of novels. So I'm off to a decent start with these 3 life goals. I think I don't want to limit myself and say I can't accomplish, you know, all those at the same time. So,
and it's like interesting. I think of, man, I have like a lot of RHAP books literally just within reach, but maybe that's because my apartment's so small. But like Taryn's book is like also look at me, like Taryn, Steven, here we go. Actually, both of them come to mind because Taryn, I know, also has that goal of like writing nonfiction, even though he's written Behind the Mirror, and obviously Steven's doing so much, and he did, because I had him on Pod Friends, I want to say close to 3 years ago, maybe 2.5, however many years ago at this point. But like he was talking about the short stories he was writing, and it's a process. Like I'm totally with you in terms of like wanting to write more, wanting to write a book. Again, back to weird similarities I didn't know that we had. Like creative writing, that was my subject. In fact, like I almost had a creative writing minor in college, and I was like 1 class short. And this was like one of the, I think, the byproducts of like my struggle freshman year, where I was like, well, I could take this creative writing course and officially get the creative writing minor, and then I would have to have like another semester, or I could just finish my requirements and get the hell out of here. And that's exactly what I did. So I relate though to like that idea of having those passions. And the good news is like you don't need to do it all now. It all happens step by step. And it's funny because like even in listening to you, I wouldn't be surprised in like, you know, a few years from now, if we're back, like if I'm like, Andy, I need you to come back on Pod Friends, because I just feel like to me, there's like the evolution's continuing for you. Like there's so much I'm sure there's like so much that will evolve with your relationship with Survivor, with your relationship with writing, like family, work, like all the things. And I don't know, it's just like interesting to me to like hear this aspect of that, because like from Survivor, in terms of what people know or were exposed to, like one of the things was of course like your experience with anxiety and like everything there, like right out there for people at the beginning, which I think also the really beautiful thing was like just how you kind of showed up as like, or you were shown or depicted oftentimes, as much as a TV show like Survivor will depict you, like as this full-fledged person who is resilient, who is brilliant, who is strategic, who can be chaotic, but also who's really measured at times, like all these different things. I don't know, it's like interesting to hear kind of where you are and how you're perceiving things in some of those goals too. I am curious, like how do you now, looking back on like the Survivor 47 experience, and especially like the mental health side of things, like I don't know, like how do you look at that or think about that now? Because that's an insanely vulnerable experience,
for sure.
but also one that I'm sure like a lot of people gained a lot from, and learned a lot from in terms of just themselves and others around them.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, and something I think about every day, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I do think a lot of things we've talked about like do help kind of set the stage for it in a way, because it's just like, okay, so talking about different stages of my life and how I felt about myself, especially when it comes to confidence. Now, I do feel like every step along the way, I have definitely experienced anxiety since I was young. But what's interesting is, at least the way I looked at it was like I always had a handle on it almost, or like I was super high functioning within having anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how fully true that is, but that was my personal narrative, is like it never revealed itself. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure you're able to, like, in day-to-day life, we're able to control so many different factors, like what we eat, often who we interact with, like how much we put, our energy into different things, like self-soothing, like all these other things. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
an unpredictable environment
Yeah.
when you get on Survivor. Not to interrupt where you're going
Oh,
with that.
and
Go for it.
then so we kind of left off like 2019. I think that's when I gained just a whole new level of confidence about myself and what I could do and how I am with people. And I don't want to skip over these years, but like that kind of continued into 2020 and to uh, the early 20s, and then into my casting, which of course we'll talk about, and then into Survivor. But I felt like what I was in those conversations with casting, I'm like, I'm a rocket ship. Like I've, like I have dealt with like struggles, and I'm just on an amazing upward trajectory. Like that's what I kept saying in casting. And I don't think that's fully not true or anything like that. I think that is true. And I think it's actually fun. You know what comes to mind is, maybe this is a bad metaphor, but like, have you seen The Pit?
I judge myself every day for not seeing it. I'm familiar though. I'm familiar with The Pit.
Will you indulge me in like a kind of a spoiler? So just,
Please.
all right.
No. Yeah.
So the difference is that the characters in the show are saving lives. I've never saved a single life. Like I'm just talking about my own struggle. But there's a character. So the main character. So in season 1, you get to know him all season as someone who's highly competent, good at his job, a leader, killing it, like, and just someone, a full-fledged character and whatnot. And it wasn't until towards the end of the season where something bad happened that kind of triggered trauma he had in the past, and he has a full-blown meltdown. He has a meltdown,
Mhm.
like, and it's a big narrative turn where it's just like, oh my god, like, but it sort of paints a picture, and like it fills in the blanks of like who this person is, what he deals with. I watched that and I was like, this is so interesting, because in my personal narrative of someone who's lived my whole life, like that's what I experienced. You know what I mean? Like a big, like I've come such a long way, and then I dealt with a setback that can feel really horrible and doubly horrible because it's a relapse into, previous thoughts and whatever. But the big difference is that in that fictional scenario, The Pit, it's like you've already built a whole picture of that person, and you just saw that moment at a later time. In the Survivor narrative, it's everyone's first impression,
Mm.
and it's just so different. It's just so, it's taken in a different way, and I think that first impressions are, uh, indelible, like, or they're sticky, right?
Yeah.
So that's the dissonance I feel sometimes. Um, it's hard because I want to, like, because it's like I have spent like I completely own the specific moment after the challenge. Passed out from heat exhaustion, and I kind of what say some things on the mat. Like, okay, that was like a 2-minute period. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I never like shirked away from it or like tried to paint a narrative. I'm like pulling some move, although there is a little bit of complexity to that, because even in that my state where I barely remember it, I remember thinking like, I feel these things and it might be advantageous to say them, and then maybe it's going to make me stay in the game. So it's a complicated cocktail of different things.
Right.
But it was just, very out there and extremely public and a very public first impression. And I just think that that's something that is still like, you know, it's just interesting to live with. Like, and it's, again, I came out way ahead, and I think it's been so meaningful hearing from people ever since, you know, who watched that and the rest of the season and everything after that. But I think to me, it's really, it's a unique Survivor experience. And I think one of the good things is that it's very much grounded me in the sense of public opinion and like external validation. And I think it kind of set me on the right path when it comes to being someone who's not a public figure and then being like super exposed, where I had to know going in to like not be too high or too low with how people felt. And then as the season progressed, I mean, to this day, like one of my big rules is really not looking at anything. So like, I don't even know. I probably have one of the worst perceptions of like, how I feel by the fans, really. Like, I kind of know. I don't really know it that well. Suffice to say, like it improved. Like my image improved over time. But like, because of all of that, like whether it's high or low, it really doesn't sink in for me much anymore. And so it's kind of conditioned me to not care really what the fans think about me.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because my very first Pod Friends interview was with Taryn, and he was talking about this and being someone who, and he made this great point that I think about a lot in life, like that we can't just like look at the positive feedback and then not look at the negative. Like you almost have to have this like measured approach to both the positive, or like a balanced approach to the positive and the negative, where you sort of say like, I just don't need it. Like I give myself, or, you know, wherever it comes from, like I have that self-assurance to move through, which is like a hard place to be in, but I think an important one. Something that jumps out to me though, from at least my, not even just my perspective on you, but like my perception on your perception in it all, is that I feel like you mentioned like this not great first impression from your perspective. And it's like, I think a lot of us, whether it's people who struggle like with I'll say like capital A anxiety versus like, you know, symptoms of anxiety or forms of it or whatever it might be, like a lot of people could relate to that. But I think the thing that's so powerful is that could have been like, okay, Andy, first boot out, that's it, like that's his story. And like I'm so glad that was not it, because to me it just seems like over time you showed that like, yeah, people can deal with like really hard things and like be human and be emotional and be vulnerable and also just be badasses. Like I think from everything I've seen, you are insanely beloved, and of course, like, and I think obviously like people over the course of the season, your season also is like definitely one of the top 3 I've seen in various rankings of the new era. And so it's like interesting because, one, it's interesting that you're someone who's like such a part of the fan community and yet have managed to avoid that feedback, which I think is really amazing. I'm sure you get the feedback in person, which is always the best kind of feedback to get from people, where it's like, you know, the people in the RHP context, at least the people who like love you and deeply care about you. But yeah, you have so much love, and it goes without saying, like, I'm sure that people will be very excited to see you back on Survivor one day. When that happens, I just have a feeling it'll happen.
Well, there's a lot to get into because I'm open to talking about Survivor 50. To me, all this, it's not my secrets to keep. Like,
get into whatever you want to get into with Survivor 50, because it's like, I guess I just have this. I don't know. I don't know exactly where it comes from, whether it's just like talking with certain people, whether that's like Carolyn comes to mind, but also like knowing other people who were like in the process and did not get selected, but also
Yeah.
how the process went. And like Omer just talked about it. Like it's like rough. And I also feel like it's especially rough when you, with anything in life, just to like broaden it out to everyone who's listening, like anything that's like so close
Mm.
and doesn't, come together. But yeah, it's your story to tell.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. For me, it's just interesting to look back, even with this small amount of time and space, when things were happening in kind of as a whirlwind. So rewinding a little bit, there are kind of years I don't want to skip over, but we're following this thread. But we'll go to the time where I first got contacted by casting. I was in grad school at the time, and it was for season 45 or 46.
Right.
And I got an email, and it just kind of was so wild and surreal and special, and I just had to keep pinching myself. And I was like, from getting this first email to whatever happens next, like every single thing I experience is just going to be a dream come true, because I had spent a few years like visualizing like every single thing of like happening like this. So I went through the whole casting process for 45, 46, which is quite intensive, right? Flew out to LA, and then I sort of got the breakup call that I was cut after
Yeah.
That is something that was harder to deal with than whatever happened next in terms of casting. That was the moment in my life where I'm like, this is so close, and now I have no idea if they're ever going to contact me again. This just could be like the biggest missed opportunity ever. Like, I have no idea. I have no power of the situation. I gave it my all during casting, and it was very difficult. But I took that opportunity to kind of give myself back to my life instead of ruminating over it. I've told this story, but that's when I met my current girlfriend. It was like right in the wake of this. Brandon Donlin introduced
Yeah,
me.
I was gonna say shout out to Brandon Donlin.
Yeah, I've told this story, but it's just like, this probably could be one of the most important days of my life. It's like was the Survivor 44 finale in New York City, and there's just so much happening. There's so much in the pot going on. But I met the 45 cast. I think I did find out later that for me it was going to be 45 or nothing. So that is like the season that I could have been on, but I actually think, now don't quote me. No, I'm pretty sure what happened was they put the cast together for 45, and then they needed an alternate, and then they made Austin the alternate over me. So like, whatever.
Yeah. That's so, by the way, like one of the, and I would recommend people check out the Pride Has Spoken interview too that you did, but it's so, you talking about that, like really, it made me think about a lot of things, and it gave me chills because it is so freaky. I know someone, and I won't even, oh my gosh, I have a friend who, went deep into the casting process at one point a few years ago. And then somebody, I'm being very vague here. Somebody on your season, when I saw that person, I was like, oh, yep, okay. Yeah. And then like you learn this, and you're like, oh, this, like they were in very much similar archetype. And he knew it too. So but yeah, that is so bizarre to me, to like have someone else who is not you, a very different life and experience, and yet they're clearly being like looked at for that spot.
Right. And I have so much love for Austin. I think he's so great and incredible. And think of that moment where it's like, oh, they're picking between him and I to be alternates, for us both to go on Survivor very shortly after that moment is super beautiful. And we are very different, and that has to be said. But like in the real time, it was like, you know, one step more demoralizing. I explained this before, but it's just like when you're in casting, you feel like the most special person in the entire world. And then when you're cut and then like whatever, they picked someone similar-ish to you, you feel like the least special person in the world. It's kind of a tough hit in the real time, unless you have a real hope that like that opportunity is going to come. I kind of took, I just had the mentality where like, you know what, like the candle is still lit. Like a deep part of me believes it's going to happen. But in terms of what I'm going to be doing these next 12 months, I'm just going to give myself to my life. And that was it was a great decision. Right. And then, okay, so I dealt with that. I dealt with being close to not getting on. I got on the next year. I had a heck of an experience. I entered Survivor 50 casting a little bit before the 47 premiere.
Yeah.
Aired.
It's like probably August is what I've heard from a lot of people. Around there. And
so yeah, that was like when that happened, I was like, this is such a whirlwind. Like, I can't believe all this stuff is happening concurrently. It's kind of like, you know, when you have a Survivor journey, it really like it starts when you first get contacted and it doesn't end until the trailer starts for the season after yours on air. You know what I mean? Like that's a full life cycle. And so kind of in that context, like I was kind of in 2 seasons at once, you know what I mean? Throughout the entire airing of 47, and that couldn't help but like kind of color that experience. With 50, and then that was like my mode for a while. And like, you know, when you're in that mode, you can't leave the Survivor space. You're just still in the mindset, because then you're, you know, thinking about how you're going to prepare for the next time. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you know, I just finished my master's degree that I got, and I was putting it on hold because like I couldn't start a new job and then leave like 2 weeks after, you know what I mean? So it was just, everything was pending. Everything was up in the air. I think probably not the best scenario if you want to play Survivor again. You know what I mean? It's just like, it was it felt really fast. When I got cut from Survivor 50, it wasn't until a week before I was going to fly out. Now, oh man, this is not the me complaining, but I know people took the casting process in a very tough fashion. I'm only speaking about my personal like experience and my take with it. Like, I recovered pretty fast. Like, I did. I took it in stride, and I think there are only a couple things about this missed opportunity of being on 50 that kind of feel like a meaningful, like, you know, like it's just like, how amazing would it be to be, you know, on a season with Surrey, etc. Especially as someone who's such a fan. But in many real ways, I believe it's for the best, and we'll just see what happens with my life going forward, which is more important than my Survivor career going forward. So like, yeah. I do think I think I've taken it in stride pretty quickly, and I have no idea or speculation about the future when it comes to Survivor. I can only say that for most people, I think a back-to-back is kind of a tough experience for Survivor, and it's just not ideal in many ways. And for me, if I were to ever play again, which there are no guarantees, you know, at all, just if, I think that it's better to play Survivor at one period of your life and then grow and change and live and be in a completely different chapter and then play it again. I think that's meaningful. I think that's cool and worthwhile. So 50, and the other thing with 50 is, I think what is kind of residual is like, you kind of feel half, and I've dealt with this before with 45, you feel kind of half connected to it still. You have half ownership, or it's like, you know, it's like, I was almost on that season, so like, what if I was on that tribe? What if blah blah blah? And that's natural. But I think going into 50, which I'm excited for as a fan, I'm completely ceding ownership of it. Like, that is just, it's a season of Survivor I was not on, much just like 48 and 49. I was not on that season. Also not on 50. I just can't wait to see, it's an exciting thought, season 50 with all those people playing. So let me just try to enjoy that.
Oh, yeah, no, like there's so much there, but like I could just imagine like well, I can imagine like for myself, um, just like a lot of the word that comes to mind that I'm sure people use or think about. And I think it's honestly, I don't think that there's anything wrong with this word or this feeling, but I feel like I would be like bitter at the time that certain things happen or don't happen.
Mm.
But I think to come back around and like realize like, I mean, you don't know we don't know what the future will look like with
Yeah.
Survivor, whether it even just means you're going to be doing awesome things and you won't be available because you're going to be busy living your life. And I think that like this is something that I think is so fascinating about Survivor, but like casting in general, is that I believe that in an ideal world, like the shows that we watch, but especially a show like Survivor, like wants you to want it so much. Like I always think of like Courtney Yates, for instance, who was found
Right.
in a restaurant as a server and like, a lot of her clips and everything else. And she's amazing and still talks about Survivor and talks with survivors and the like, which is cool. With Leslie Neese and with Todd Herzog to some extent on a podcast now. But like, I think of her where it's like, she's too cool for school. She doesn't want to be here. I feel like nowadays it's like, no, you gotta really want it. You gotta dig deep. And there's a lot of that, which I think it's great to be so invested in anything that you do in life and to be all in. And at the same time, like there's so much more to life. And like a lot of things that are not even like just more meaningful right now, but I think more meaningful looking at what your life will be, Andy. So it's a lot, but I know that things, again, I don't know what your availability is going to look like once you're publishing all of those novels and casting calls, because I'm sure that will happen one way or the other at some point in life. But yeah, like I think what's so cool is like looking at what you did have, like the fact that you were like clearly someone who they very much wanted in that situation. I don't know. There's a lot of emotions. Like I have a lot of complicated emotions about Survivor and the like, and also just like with rejection in general in life, and it's hard. But like also I feel like you're like so beloved and so celebrated. And sometimes like you never know if that leads to like even more love that you will not see on social media as someone who doesn't see it. But I feel like there's like this weird thing where like people lean even more. We saw that with like Rob, with Carolyn, with Jesse, with others, with Jerry, even with the season. So it's like interesting just to like see where it goes. Just to like talk about the love that you do receive, like Andy, I don't know, did you ever, I don't know if this is a controversial topic, but like, did you ever have merch for yourself during your season? I don't remember seeing Baby Andy merch. I feel like that's the new thing.
You know what? I probably should have capitalized on that more. I think I had a stance where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do merch. Like, but there were a few things like when we got home, I think Sam and I kind of wanted to make some Operation Italy merch, but we were kind of like, I guess we didn't act on that quickly enough. CBS ended up selling some Operation Italy merch. It's on the Survivor store.
That sounds cool in its own
right, I guess. There was some, like the great Tricky Rice made an Andy shirt.
Ooh, yes, shout out to Tricky.
There's some merch out there, but I did not capitalize on the moment.
What does it feel like, though? I mentioned Todd already. What does it feel like, Andy, to have your own Funko Pop?
I have another one here.
Oh my God! Wait, you have it. Did you just point
there
right
are
behind
many
you?
Todd Herzog is incredible at
Yeah.
what he does. I think the way it works is whenever he gets a request, he makes a new one. So
yeah,
this is like one this is my mom requested this one.
Oh, yeah, there it is right over your head. Hold
But
on. Let me make you like full screen for a second just
I,
to see it. There it is.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's a great one. It's I got the look I had. What was it? Oh, it's John Lovett's t-shirt I'm wearing, which I ended up wearing a lot during the game. But when a fan does another request for me, then he makes a new one with like a different look, and it's just incredible. He does an amazing job.
Oh, wow. That's awesome though. It's cool. It's like, I don't know. It's interesting. Like what I don't you as such a super fan
Yeah.
and someone who's so involved in the community, like what did that feel like to have like Tricky making a design, like had the Funko Pop, like what's that like? I almost like I could not picture having an action figure or equivalent of an action figure of myself or a Funko Pop or something. So like what was that? I feel like the closest I have is like the little logo of Pod Friends, which I've been told by Shannon Gus does not look like me, but it's fine. That's debatable, you know.
It's a great question. All right, let me try to rewind again. I don't know. I keep feeling like I'm time traveling. All right.
I love it.
2020. This is the long answer. Just bear with me. 2020, I was like riding that high of my life, and then COVID hit, which altered all of our sort of life situations. I was lucky to not have some horrible impact from COVID with me or my family, but you know, I was shut down. Like I was like, I didn't go in the office. I was able to keep my job, and it just became remote, you know. But I went back home to Buffalo, and I had a lot more free time. And I just could not stop watching Big Brother. I did not mess with Big Brother at all growing up or whatever. When I was into Survivor, it looked ridiculous. It looked so unnatural. But then the way that certain people on Rob as a Podcast talked about it, they're like, as if it's like, you know, the second half of the pie of like what we all love. I'm like, wow, like this is kind of intriguing. Like, what is this stuff? So I gave it and I was a very active patron at the time. So I gave it a shot, and then COVID came for me to just become completely obsessed with it, which grew my love for RHAP. Because I wasn't just going back and rewatching all the Big Brother. I was like updating Rob about my progress. But I was also, when the time came, maybe around Big Brother 12 or so, listening to all the archives podcasts that Rob was doing about Big Brother. So that in itself was like a special time for my love of RHAP. And a fun fact, when the class of 2020 was announced, I did consider putting in a tape.
I feel like I knew this.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
It's interesting here. I don't know where I heard that or when that came up, but yeah, it's funny to me. I've heard that from like a few people. I feel actually, you know what's funny? I think that came up with talking with Mark Levy from Squid Game: The Challenge season 2, who a few weeks ago on the show. Yeah, I guess a lot of people applied. It makes me feel special. You know, I feel like
I took it out. I didn't end up applying.
Hey,
that's more power to you because it's a leap, right?
Honestly, I applied at like 11:58 p.m. and the deadline was midnight. Like it was literally within 10 minutes of the submission. So, you know, it was less of a leap, more like a trip and fall into something that I'm glad that I did.
Right. And so I'm answering the question of how much this means to me, right? So I'm super into this, and I'm super into Big Brother. I actually applied to Big Brother a couple times. I put in my tapes for both shows just to do it, because I was like, okay, it's kind of a numbers game. You just, I think it's probably good practice. I think I heard it from, Tommy Sheen did that strategy. I think the more tapes you make, the better you're going to get at the tapes. Because
I'm sure.
Try out different things, and like one mode of doing it is going to hit, and then you can put yourself in a good position. I was in casting for Big Brother 23. I I didn't get like super far, but it was like a, kind of this hit of like, this could happen, right? Or like I could play one of these games. And so I spent, like I was back in New York by like 2021 or whatever. I live in Brooklyn. I live in, well, at the time, and I kind of live in the same area, but I live by this park, Prospect Park. Favorite place in the city. It's like, to me, it's home. And I would just spend so much time, because I would go on runs, or maybe I would just walk through this park. And whenever I walked through this park, I would spend hours like walking through it and listening to RHAP, or listening to mostly RHAP. But then I would just be really dreaming about and manifesting this dream of mine, which is to go play Survivor, hopefully like the number one option, Survivor. And I can still access how vivid those dreams are, you know, in a kind of abstract sense. Like, and it just like, I remember, you know, I would spend time envisioning what my deep dive would be, like what that would look like, what I would be saying, what my preseason interview with Mike Bloom is going to be, what my, you know, Terran show / road to reality / pod friends, even though it didn't exist at the time, like what that would look like, what that would, that's what happened. Like every single part of it, I would like have vivid just visions of it happening. And I'm not a kind of like supernatural, like, or necessarily spiritual person. That's not my usual way of thinking about things, but these visions were so real and vivid, and I just had a core belief that they would come true. And then they all came true. And so every little thing, like I said, every like part of the casting process, the call that I was going to get on, just like all these snapshots, right? The fact that I got a deep dive with Rob, the fact that, you know, like I envision how cool it would be to be kind of like the first, maybe like active patron to like then go on these shows. Which is funny because Asia.
Yeah, Asia said, hold my beer.
Like, what's one up there? But all these like little micro things that add up to what it's, you know, like what a super fan thinks about when they get on, like, you know, the idea of playing Survivor or playing Big Brother, down to the Funko Pops. It's almost too much to wrap my head around how powerful it is that it all came true. And it's just like, I have to, it's almost too much kind of goodness to process, you know, to wrap my head around. So like, I have to, like, sometimes I have to actively take a beat and truly be grateful of all that. And then, I don't know, the way I look at it is, well, I don't know. I'm actually, this is an ongoing thing, how I look at, like, you know, I kind of paid a small price of having a kind of some trauma on the show or whatever. That was like, you know, $10 worth of fulfillment lost or whatever, and I gained thousands of dollars or whatever. So it's like a big net positive. I am very, very, very grateful.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think it's just beautiful and powerful hearing like your experience and hearing how it's like filled up your cup, so to speak, in so many ways. And like your journey continues, your story continues, but it's so I'm really gonna have a lot of fun like listening back or watching this back, because it's a very different experience, like as a podcaster, but being in this community, like there are lots of weird, like you referenced the parasocial elements of all of this, and it gets like there's like a lot of arrows and like red string to draw of like all of the different types of parasocial relationships sometimes in the like, but I mean, it is like so much of it's really surreal and like it blows my mind, like how, like seeing people anytime people wear the Pride Has Spoken merch, for instance, and there's like that's really popular at the different live shows and the like, and I love to like take pictures with those people and like talk with them and see it, and of course, like we could both understand how deeply like especially queer people would resonate with a lot of those conversations, including your episode. And I am, yeah, I'll just mention it. And I don't even know if it'll be ready for when this episode comes out, but I'm going to have Pod Friends merch, like Pod Friends shirts at least come out, which is like the logo and all that. And maybe we'll do other things, but like it's kind of surreal because when you're like the Pride Has Spoken, that's like Evie and Grace and me too, you know, we're doing it. But like it's cool it's so hard to digest like how special the community is and like how special it is to like have people care about you and like in this way in this community. And so I just relate to you a lot on trying to figure out how to digest all of it. I could be here forever for you, Andy, or with you, Andy. Like I have so many more questions, but I have like actually one more question I will ask you for this interview.
Sure.
And we'll run it back someday. I have a feeling. But I want to ask you, Andy, a question I ask everyone on the podcast, because I feel like that story of just like how much this means and like how much love there is, but also how hard it is to digest. It's such a beautiful like point to sort of end us on. But I ask everybody, Andy, if your life were a book or documentary, what would the title be and why? And I am so excited to hear your answer. And I'm going to stop talking, but I hope that you're using this time to come up with your answer. Let's see. You might already have one, honestly, as someone who's like really thought about writing and who's like a creative as well.
I guess I think the title would be The Rocket Ship.
Ooh.
Which is, it's just a word I use a lot when I was talking with Jeff and who like during Survivor casting. And I would like talk about my life and my journey, and I would say, and I'm a rocket ship. And with the caveat that it's like I'm kind of a rocket ship in rocky terrain, or like during an asteroid belt where it's not a straight line up, it's jagged and it's crooked, and then sometimes you're kind of like crashing a little bit and then you pop back up. I think that's just how I always want to look at my life, where even if it's like a bumpy ride, the one thing that keeps happening is that then I shoot back up. And I'm just very, very, I'm proud of that. You know, when it comes to like my strengths and weaknesses, I think that I'm always kind of there for myself, and I'm always able to rebound in kind of like sometimes startling ways. I'm able to rebound and then just shoot back up. So I guess, yeah, that's what I would call it.
I love that so much, Andy. Any closing like words to wrap us up for people?
I've really loved doing this. I really have. And I think I'm in the right mindset to just kind of reflect a little bit. Like I said, I've had a modicum of time and space. We talked about my journey leading up to Survivor. And then since then, I've done, and I'm really happy about this fact, where I've kind of given myself back to my life again. And like, I think the central pillar that's taking up a lot of my time and energy right now is just like building my life. I started a new job in the last few months. I'm building my life with Shannon, and that's been very good and sort of normalizing. I just also wanted to get into this more, but probably of all the beautiful things that have happened with Survivor, it's the people that I played Survivor with is just, that's something I never expected to have happen, right? Even in those vivid dreams, I didn't dream of coming out of it with a group of people who are so close, and like truly it's like it's like a new family. It's really unreal. I don't, especially, and it's just like, because it's all these little micro decisions that, like, okay, all these circumstances that lead to like Survivor picking this group of people or that group of people or this person to be on this season or that season. They were cooking when they put all the 47 people together.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, and in my humble opinion, it's an incredible season of Survivor. So it's not like people didn't take advantage of the competition part of Survivor. Like, everyone was like playing very hard and trying to win. And it wasn't the most necessarily like, oh, kumbaya, like let's throw the game aside. Like, a highly competitive and entertaining season of Survivor with an eclectic group of personalities who also largely just happen to be extremely down to earth and emotionally mature people who can take it and run with it and become very close friends after the fact. So that's something I'm really, really grateful for. But I think that, again, like, I'm a little bit have a little bit of space from all this, and I'm kind of focusing on everything's real, but like, some other real practical stuff. And it really wasn't until Rob went on the Traders and I saw him kind of like do another incredible adventure in his life and then have his deep dive where he opened up in all these incredible ways, that kind of reminded me and reinvigorated me about how special this area of all of our lives are. And that's everyone involved with Rob as a podcast. So I hope that this podcast is kind of like another additional love letter to this community.
Thank you so much, Andy, for being part of this week's episode of Pod Friends. A very special episode, and even more special because I got to announce the new shirts, the new merch for Pod Friends. Check it out. Rob has a website.com/store, and please be sure to let me know. Send me a screenshot of you getting the merch. We'll keep track of it because I have a special surprise or gift or something that I want to line up for one lucky listener who buys some of the merch. And for any of the listeners, all of the listeners who want to be part of something special, well, please share your story and let me know how Survivor in this community has changed your life for the better. Go to bit.ly/Survivor50stories. That's bit.ly/Survivor50stories. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for this very special episode, Andy. And thank you all, as always, for being a pod friend. Bye, everybody.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.